That was good. That was good. We need like a little theme music, right?
I can do that.
Yeah, you can.
And get together like
We have an actual musician.
acapella group here.
Yeah.
Maybe the Godfather theme,
we're
because
gonna do a double feature tonight. Oh, sorry.
you look like the Godfather, so maybe we'll have the Godfather Nina Rota, musical composition in the back with the, accelerating, symphony. So
Yes, get me my violin.
Where's my cigar? I need a cigar. So we're gonna do a double feature tonight. 2 chapters. The first chapter 4, which we're about to read, is a short one, and then we're going to get into a significantly chunkier one, which is where they are basically heading out. As Ariel pointed out before the intro, should they choose not to accept it, there would not be a story. So you can, in fact, guess that they will. All right. Without further ado, Act 2, Chapter 4, assignment. By the way, the last one ended with them basically saying, whatever, just tell us what the thing is, right? Mm-hmm. That's basically the last statement of the last chapter. So going back to this one, Act 2, Chapter 4, assignment. Why? To steal from me, of course, Brad smiled. Steal from you? Lomic was taken aback. First off, I don't steal. And anyway, why do you need us to do that? Don't you have plenty of, thieves around? Garrett chuckled. Indeed we do, Lomic, indeed we do, Brad responded. But let me explain what we need stolen first. And to do that, I need to ask you about Trade Bay. Trade Bay, Nael asked. Yes, Nael. Have you ever wondered why the ships fly? Everybody spoke at once. Well, I mean, they just do. No, really. Yeah, sure, but it's not like we can even get anywhere near it. Magic, duh. And why do we care? See, told you you'd be interested, Brad laughed. Well, if you've ever seen how they get the ships up the tube, at that, Garrett nodded vigorously, you'd know that the docks officers have a special box that they place on the ship that nobody is ever allowed to get near. But there is no question that whatever is in the box gives the ships their ability to fly, at least temporarily. Well, without getting into the hows and whys of it, which you're not really authorized to know anyway, it seems like one of the docks officers had decided to smuggle one of those boxes out. The Maritime Guild has asked us to intervene discreetly to make sure that he doesn't succeed. But why us? Nael asked, nodding her brown hair aside so she could look at Brad fully. 2 reasons. One is that we think that somebody in our own ranks is also involved. In fact, we're certain of it, though we don't know who they are. This means they're likely to hear of any plan to foil them, unless we use a special task force of new recruits. Garrett isn't new, Solis objected. You're right, he isn't. But if he leaks it out, he's the only one who could have done it, so I'd know. And I think Garrett appreciates that. Brad looked meaningfully at Garrett, who nodded. Plus, I don't think he's our mole. He's far too earnest for that sort of thing. And the second reason? The second reason is the one I mentioned before. I'd wanted to learn more about all of you. Your special abilities should make this sort of job a cinch, much easier than our typical operation. Aiden spoke up. But why not just go and get the box from wherever it is? His hand absent-mindedly touched the top, mangled part of his ear. We could do that, sure, but then we'd lose the element of surprise, and with it, our chances of catching the mole, Brad said. Just beat them up real good. I'm sure they'll tell you, Nael suggested derisively. Perhaps, but I suspect that our insider has not been dealing with them directly. Our people can be quite good at hiding, you see. Aiden nodded. Then we have another complication. Whomever is setting this up is being way too obvious about it. Brad paused and waited. No questions? Really? Nobody? He stopped again, but nobody spoke up. I'll tell you anyway, Smarty Pants. We know that whoever is behind this knows that it is completely forbidden for knowledge of the boxes to leave Lavatown, let alone one of the actual boxes, or more importantly, its contents. It is, in fact, one of the few capital offenses in the city. Oh, now I see why we need a secret prison, Nael murmured quietly, yet everyone heard her clearly. Brad winked at her. Right you are, dear. Anyway, you'd think that they would be all covert about it and try to sneak it out without anyone noticing. Instead, it's almost as if we are being led to it. There's a small caravan leaving tomorrow morning towards the capital, a shipment of cargo for one of the large merchant vessels that just docked in the bay. several carts, drivers, about half a dozen guards, and one merchant. And guess what? We got not one, not two, but 3 anonymous tips that are missing boxes in one of those carts. So what's wrong with that? Didn't you say you had people all over the place? The golden strand of hair that Solis had been chewing on was stuck to her cheek. Brad nodded. Yes, exactly. You can't be smart enough to steal one of these, arrange for it to be smuggled out in a caravan, presumably without raising suspicion, and then have several leaks in your chain. It just doesn't really make any sense. So here's what we think is really happening. The whole thing is a decoy. Any boxes in that caravan are not the real thing. The problem is that we have no other leads. So I need you all to go after the caravan anyway and see if you can get any clues that would lead us to the real one, and hopefully the person trying to smuggle it out. And how are we to do that exactly? Lomek asked. The muscles in his powerful upper arms rippled in indignation. I have no idea, to be honest. Maybe a driver will know something and you can get them to talk. Maybe the decoy box will reveal a clue. It's a low-risk, low-reward play. I don't really expect it to play out, but as a way to get a sense of the lot of you and how you work together and how valuable you might be to us, well, as far as I'm concerned, that's a useful outcome whether you succeed or not. Just don't be too noisy about it. We will disavow any knowledge of your group if you mess things up. So you gotta be smart and you gotta be stealthy. Assuming you don't get caught, but it can at least prove that the whole thing is a fraud, I'll pay each of you 2 gold when you return. And while I don't expect it, if you actually find a useful lead, then I will make it 10 each. Lomek gasped. Garrett giggled, his face displaying almost childlike enthusiasm. Did you say 10 gold for each of us? Lomek's voice was incredulous. Yes, indeed. Think your father can do some good with that kind of money? He could build an entire new church with that. So you're in? Nael asked from across the table. Hell yeah. You? Yeah, why not? 2 gold is pretty good for a couple of days' work, man. Nael was grinning. The rest of the group nodded their assent. Well then, Brad smiled. As we like to say out here on giving an assignment, go get. And that's that chapter. Any comments to this before we proceed?
So it's a trial, kind of a trial. They could get something interesting out of it, but he wants to basically see how they work together.
Pretty much, trying to figure out what this can do.
Yeah. Huh.
Contract to hire.
Ish, yeah, right? Are they worthy? Yeah, right. Somebody was saying something, I think, on the Zoom.
I was just saying, I feel like I'm starting to know more of the characters. They're becoming even more 3-dimensional, like just their little tics and things that they're doing, like somebody Solace chewing on her hair or something. There was like all these little characterizations that are starting to help them just become more alive, more dynamic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this has been happening in those first 3 chapters of the book.
Right.
So, but also in this one, like Aiden top of his ear,
Aiden's
right?
ear, Lormek's childlike laugh. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
Hmm?
His upper muscles kind of like rippling, right? There's a lot of like these, and this is intentional, right? Because remember, the first act is sort of like, if you think about it from perspective, it's the overseer perspective.
Yeah.
I'm looking at everything from the top, right? I have a tapestry, I'm shining a light on something. So it's a little detached. Now we're in the story. So we zoomed all the way in.
Mhm.
Right.
And so that is reflected in the interaction you're having with the characters, basically.
Yeah, cool.
And thank you for picking up on that. I'm delighted you said that. So it means that it's successful.
Yeah.
Akhilesh, you had something to say?
No, sir. I was listening intently. I was imagining the big body that you were describing of that guy. Aiden.
Except that he's a dwarf, right?
Yes.
When you think about it. So he's right. It's a bit of a
Nobody throws a dwarf.
All right, let's move on to the next one then. Act 2, Chapter 5. Are you okay?
I'm good.
Act 2, Chapter 5, insertion. That's the subject line for the next one. If I could only lay my hands on one of those boxes, I could tell you which one actually mattered. Aidan's voice was contemplative. Nael and Solis exchanged a glance, then looked out from their hiding spot at the top of a staircase on the edge of Trade Bay. Well, if they are all fake, then none of them would be the right one, Nael said. Still, do you mind running it by me again? What is it you can do exactly? Like the wood tells you things? It's hard to explain, really. To me, it feels like the wood's telling me things. Not in so many words, but it can show me how it feels, like it hurts right here, or this cut doesn't feel right, that sort of thing. And what happens exactly when you touch it? Well, I mean, again, I'm not sure if I fully understand it myself. It's like I can talk back to the wood. I can say things like, put yourself together this way, or twist around that way. And it does that. When everything feels right, the wood will tell me that too. And that's when I know it's happy again. Aidan seemed embarrassed. I wouldn't believe you if I hadn't seen it for myself, Nael added. I would, Solly said softly. She took a breath. It's a little like how I feel the energy that makes things go boom. She smiled slightly. It's in the air all around us, some places more than others, but it's there all the time. And in my head, I speak to it too, in a sense. It's just that I understand so little. My vocabulary is really limited, but it feels like there's a lot more I could say if I only knew what to say and how to say it. Aidan nodded. Yeah, me too, but with wood. A few seconds passed in silence as they all looked back towards the platform on the docks. Which cart did you say it was? He asked Solis. It's in one of those four, she pointed towards a small caravan that had just finished loading. Oh, and look, here's Lomek right on time. Her face took on a look of concentration. Shush, both of you. Let me listen. As Lomek walked towards the caravan, Garrett made himself invisible as he approached from the other side. It wasn't hard to do with all the typical activity on the platform at midday. He didn't even need to play with the shadows. His small stature meant most people ignored him anyway, and he had developed a remarkable capacity to ensure that they continued to do so, even while he moved right in front of their noses. I am nothing but a meaningless drone, he projected, a speck of dust. Pay me no heed. And they usually didn't, at least if they had no reason to suspect any sort of foul play. Garrett, in turn, was very good at avoiding situations where foul play would be suspected. As Lomek initiated the conversation with the caravan guards, Garrett slipped under the last wagon. After a moment, to ensure that no one was looking, he silently vaulted into it. There he settled amongst the cargo and waited. Man, he's good, Solis muttered under her breath as they watched the group in front of the caravan erupt in laughter. What is he saying? Aidan asked. Just told him some cockamamie story about the church needing something urgent from the capital. Didn't quite catch the details, but looks like a couple of them knew of him. Seems like they bought it. And you can really hear what they're saying all the way from here? Aidan sounded incredulous. Yeah, sort of. When there's a lot of noise in between, like here, then I sometimes can't make everything out, but as long as we are speaking in normal tones, yeah. That's so cool, Aidan exclaimed. I suppose that makes sense, Nael remarked. Both of them turned towards her. See, if I can throw my voice around, then I suppose it stands to reason that someone else could sort of catch it, right? The question hung in the air. We should try playing around with it sometime, Nael added after a moment. How so? Solis asked. Well, if I can throw it and you can catch it, then maybe we can figure out a way to talk to each other somehow, like over a distance. Seems to me like it's not super helpful. You don't need me to reach out to hear you, and I don't need you to toss your words at me. I can pick them up myself. Yeah, I suppose you're right, Nael sighed. It just feels like we're missing something. They looked at each other. Hold on, Aidan said. How far can you toss around your hearing, Solis? I'm not entirely sure. Try it. You can hear the caravan group. That's like 50 feet away. Can you hear those guys? Aidan pointed towards a small group about twice as far away on the other side of the platform, arguing about something. Solis's gaze followed his finger, and she started chewing a strand of her blonde hair. Barely. I can make out a few words, but it's only because they are arguing about some manifest, she said after a few seconds. Problem is, there is so much noise around, it makes it really hard. Aidan's dark eyes glinted. Gotcha. So in theory, you could hear them better in different circumstances. Okay, so how about... His eyes were scanning farther away into Trade Bay itself. There! He pointed towards the middle of Trade Bay, a couple hundred yards towards the middle of the massive floating dock, two people huddled together, deep in conversation. Yeah, I don't think so, Solis laughed. Try. I'm telling you, I can't. It's really far away. You can't? As in, you can't make mysterious magical shockwaves with your fingers? Solis stared at him for a moment, then sighed and turned back towards the two men. She closed her eyes, then tried to project her hearing out as far out as she could. It's too far, she opened her eyes. You're not trying hard enough. Try again. Okay, sheesh, I'll try once more, but once it doesn't work, you let it go. You hear me? Aidan nodded. She closed her eyes again and concentrated. Her brow furrowed, and she could sense the myriad of conversations unfolding in front of them, a cacophony of sound that, she knew, could be made louder or quieter in parts if she concentrated. She tried pushing her hearing harder than she'd ever tried in her entire life. She never had a reason to listen in on someone so far away. It was starting to give her a headache. She was about to give up when suddenly she could smell it. The unique smell that always accompanied her magic materialized unexpectedly, delicious as ever. There was nothing better in the whole world, no feeling that even came close. Interesting. It had never showed up before when she was listening. Headache or not, she wasn't about to let go of it. And then, suddenly, her hearing leaped ahead. It was like a cat madly trying to escape her grasp, a dog pulling on a leash to chase a squirrel. Like a living creature, her hearing flew this way and that, and then it became more than just sound. She could feel the vortices of wind around the wings of a seagull flying far above, was tantalized by vibrations of people talking on the shallow docks, 2 shelves below, and yes, momentarily, she could listen in to the 2 men in the middle of Trade Bay. They were talking about repairs to one of the ships. Above all else, she found the smell of it utterly intoxicating. The headache turned into a migraine. It started pulsating and then became too much to bear. She had to stop. Inhaling deeply, taking in the last of the wonderful scent, Solis closed her eyes and rubbed her throbbing temples before slowly opening them again. They were staring at her. What? She asked hesitantly. Aidan and Nael exchanged a glance, then Aidan spoke softly. Your eyes. Lomek took his place next to the human merchant in the Corantan merchant barouche. Across from them sat a King's trade representative on his way back to Coranta City. Behind them were stacked a number of boxes instead of the more typical vis-a-vis. The merchant smiled at him. So, I understand that you're Rajiv the churchman's son? Lomek nodded. Yeah, clearly not his, actual son, he added with a smile, gesturing at his obvious dwarven features. Right, of course, the merchant chuckled. Nonetheless, I heard he took in a child to raise as his own. Just didn't expect I'd ever run into you. Is that important? No, I suppose it isn't, the merchant said after a moment's thought. Anyway, nice to meet you. I'm Alfred. Lomek shook his hand firmly yet carefully, so as not to apply too much pressure on the soft flesh of the well-appointed merchant. He knew that he could break Alfred's bones quite easily if he wanted to do so. So you know my father? Well, everybody knows about your father. They say he's the one who keeps the shallows from getting to... Alfred let his voice trail off. To what? Lomek maintained his casual tone. Alfred eyed him for a moment. Too shallow, I suppose. Can't have all those poor people all over the place without nobody to take care of them, right? Make the city look bad. Right, yes, of course. Always figured that's how he kept the church going and the place clean. That's real holy work, it is. And then adopting a mother dark skin? Stroke of genius, if you ask me. How can anyone not love him for that? City must be paying him on the side. Thieves Guild, probably. Alfred winked at the trade rep sitting across from them, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin silver case. Cigarette? It's Robin made, the best stuff. Summoning a politeness he didn't feel, Lomek took a deep breath and shook his head. No, thank you, I don't smoke. Suit yourself. Alfred turned and offered the case to the trade rep, who took out one of the long, delicate, expertly rolled slims and nodded his thanks. Alfred leaned over and lit it for him. Then one for himself, before settling back into his seat and blowing out a cloud of smoke. Really nice, these. I buy a bunch every time I get over to Coranta. This is my last batch, so I definitely need to get some more this time. He smiled. Anyway, gonna be a few days before we get there, so if you change your mind, just ask. Always happy to share with an adopted son of the city. Solis glared at the two of them. What about my eyes? She demanded. They are yellow, Aidan whispered. Yeah, Niall spoke up. Remember when you did that shockwave thing back at the inn and there was that strange aura around the table? Aidan's fingers jerked at the memory of the jolt he took from it. Solis nodded. Yeah, like I said last night, it's part of the magic thing I can do. Naya lifted her hands towards Solis's face. Well, your eyes have that color now. Wait, no, it's gone. How strange, she eased back. Huh, Solis said. So you should know this. My eyes apparently get like that after I do one of my tricks. You probably just didn't notice it at the inn. But it's never happened before while I was listening in on something. I thought I just had really good hearing. Interesting. So the hearing thing, it's magic too? Aidan asked, his voice normal again. Apparently so. I didn't realize it until now. So what did you hear? Honestly, it wasn't like that. I tried really hard and nothing happened. I was about to give up and then suddenly the whole thing sort of exploded and I could hear all over the place. Down in the shallows, the birds at the cache, even your guys over there. But it was all jumbled, just a whole bunch of noise all at once. Gave me a serious headache. They grew silent. Suddenly, Aidan pointed at the caravan. Look, they're about to head out. Looks like Lormic is in that coach with the merchant and the other guy. I guess Garrett is in there too. Either of you see him? No, but that doesn't mean anything. After what he showed us yesterday, that's exactly what I'd expected. He said he'd be on the last cart, Niall said. Yeah, sneaky bastard, didn't he? Still, I wish we could. Aidan jerked his head back. Wait, I know. They looked at him quizzically. Niall, can you speak so that if Garrett was in that cart, he could hear you? Niall cocked her head to the side. Maybe. I never tried it. Usually I have to see the person to know how to make the sound specific to them. But that's with strangers. I do know Garrett, so maybe even if I can't see him, as long as I know where he is. Great, Aidan turned to Solis. And can you listen in on the cart, like the inside of it? Yeah, it isn't that far away, and I can definitely focus on something if I know where it's happening, even if it's behind a wall. Aidan was getting visibly excited. That's so cool. I figured it out. Niall, why don't you try to say something to Garrett? Like, tell him to confirm for us quietly that he's there. Then Solis, you can listen in, and if it works out, then you should be able to pick up his answer. We can use him as the conduit for both of your talents. The two women looked at him, then at each other, then back at him. I'll be damned, that might work. Definitely worth a shot. You ready? Niall turned her head towards Solis, who nodded slightly, then sat up with a look of concentration on her face. Okay, here goes. Niall took a deep breath, then spoke softly. You bugger, it's Niall here. If you're in there, say so, just keep it under your breath. Solis can hear you. Her voice faded quicker than it should have, as if an echo suddenly deadened. I had to make it go out quick, she whispered apologetically to Aidan. A moment passed. Solis snorted. They both looked at her in surprise. Yeah, he's in there all right, she smiled. Said he and two of his bugger friends are playing keepsies with some breadcrumbs. I guess the roaches are keeping him company. Huh, neat trick that, Aidan said in satisfaction. Glad we tried it. All right. We better head out. They still have to clear the toll plaza, which will take them a little while with all this traffic. We can get a couple of miles a head start on them. They all stood and walked briskly up the gentle slope of the main walkway out of Trade Bay. A bit later, the caravan headed out as well. What's that?
I'm really identifying with Niall.
You are?
Yep. Because of the sound thing. And it's cool the weave, so to speak, of her and Niall's a woman, right?
Niall is a woman, Solis
And
is a
so,
woman.
yeah, those two, because Solis can hear and Niall can project sound and manipulate sound. So that's cool. And they're going to most likely be doing some more of that.
Yeah, there's also the whole thing. Well, let's see. I will clear impressions before I try to talk over that. So
yeah. That's mine for that, especially that ending scene.
When they're starting to mesh, you can hear it, like they're starting to work together.
Right. That is true. That's part of the whole thing, right? You know, this is a start of them becoming a group.
Yeah.
Right now they're still strangers working together, but this is
Also the evolution, because she didn't know that she could do that.
Yeah.
So they're all going to come across their powers.
Yeah. So that's intriguing to see where that's going to go.
A lot of places. You will see.
Well, it's fantasy. You can take it, and you have taken us a lot of places where.
Yep.
Yeah, this is cool.
I think we lost Akhilesh, but Ariel is still with us.
Yes,
Perhaps.
I'm multitasking here. But I think what's really charming to me again is all of those little details that just continue to bring substance to each of the characters, and like us having the discovery along with them, but then just all of those nuances of character. And like one of them was like, I can't hear because there's like background noise, but maybe, and like just all of those things that make them more accessible. And then I like them pushing the edges of their boundaries of their talents and their abilities, and them sort of figuring out ways to keep each other, to keep pushing each other to do more. And like, I never thought of doing that. I guess I could, like trying to contact Garrett in the last car and stuff. So I'm appreciating all of the background that you've given us, but now I'm enjoying being along on their caper as they are undertaking it. Yeah, it's just I don't have a favorite yet. I mean, obviously the gnome is always going to be my default, but I'm trying really hard to not pick a favorite yet. I want to let them evolve on their own. So I'm very curious to see what their character arcs are like and what their little individual heroes' journeys are.
Yeah, thank you for that, because they each have their individual journey. If you thought it in terms of the greater story arc, they each have their own individual arc underneath that sits under that umbrella. And we know a little bit of it, right? I mean, we know that Aidan is looking for some mysterious talisman, right? It's part of his individual arc. But another part of his arc is understanding what the hell he can do with his special talent. And that's true for Solis, that's true for Nael.
Yeah.
And what will become apparent soon enough is that it's also true for Lomic and Garrett, who supposedly don't have special talents. They do. It's just that they're going to discover them, even though like Brad doesn't know about them, right? And so all of these kids, generally, although at least one of them is over 100 years old, being an elf,
Still a kid.
right? So Nael is like 109, I think, when the story starts. I need to go check my own notes. This is gonna continue to happen. So that this whole act 2 is about them coming into not just into their own as a group, but into their own individuals.
Yeah.
And that's what Act 2 is about, actually. So when it's the whole like, oh, this is what we really are, and this is why we're here, right? And then we're going to get into Act 3, which is where it's going to be okay, so we have a real big problem to solve, not some stupid box on a caravan, right?
Right.
Foreshadowing.
Right. So there's a little bit of all of that's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Remind me again, is it Lomac, who's the church owner's son?
Yes.
And so why did Lomac?
Lomac, yes.
So why did the boat guys call him Rajiv?
Rajiv is his dad. That's the church.
Yeah. I thought they were calling him.
Yeah,
You're Rajiv, the church owner's son.
No, I know it happened a while ago. It's because
of
the 2-week gap
Yeah,
multiplied 8 times, right? I kind of forgot that. But
No, I just misplaced the comma in my head.
yeah. So Lomac is Rajiv's son.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's the casual racism, right? Which is going to continue to play a theme in this book until it changes in a way, right? I don't want to tell you things other than very vague
but
terms.
it makes sense, right? And even the way the guy handled it, right? It's very on point. It's I'm going to be my normal self. Oh wait, I'm in front of people who it's not appropriate.
I'm still going to
for,
say
so I'm
something
still gonna
offensive.
say something, but-
I'm still going to say something offensive.
But I'll clean it.
perhaps, you
I'll
know.
clean it up in post. I said no offense,
Exactly, right?
but I appreciate that we're getting to know the characters as they're getting to know themselves as well. So it's like it's an
And each
interesting
other.
journey. Yeah,
Yeah.
and each other.
Themselves
Right.
individually.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know I could do that. And each other. So
Yeah.
I'll try it this way.
Yeah, so just like you had a little bit of discoveries of talent in this channel in this chapter for the 3 that are on the outside, I can tell you already that the next chapter will be a little bit of starting to discover the special abilities of the 2 that aren't supposed to have any, which
Yeah.
are the ones
Hmm.
in the caravan.
Yep.
So a little bit of that is coming up in this very next chapter. And I don't know whether, was it too much to use terms like baroche and vis-a-vis, but
Not for me anyway.
I thought that
I was working.
I think things like that are good for readers too, because it forces them to stretch a little bit. It's good that they don't know everything. Have to look up a little bit.
cool. Yeah, I mean, it was I never know like where it's right and where it isn't, right? One of the trickiest
Just
parts
go
is
with your gut. You're doing fine.
Yeah,
one of the trickiest bits is like, avoiding terms that are too modern that sometimes come to mind. So I don't know if you remember when I was describing like in the horror chapter, when I was talking about the Steadfast Inn having improved its selection of ales, wines, and then initially the word I wrote was liquors.
which wasn't a thing yet.
But that's not a word that's appropriate, right? It was changed eventually to elixirs, right? But it's which is the more appropriate word. But it's an interesting. It's perhaps one of the little tricky things that I've been running against as writing this thing. That ever so often I have to catch myself and say, hold on a second, no, this term is too modern.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Well, I think as long as you're peppering it in, like, and you're not doing it a ton, right? It's like as long as you're peppering it in, like that's something that a reader can appreciate. Whereas if it's just everywhere, right, and it's happening everywhere, right, then it gets chorish, right? It's like it becomes work to continually look up. So I think you're approaching it the right way.
Well,
Yeah.
so one of the terms I use for this is because you remember the tapestry imagery, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these things. What I'm doing now, because all of these things are connected, it's just doing this. So I'm coloring the strands, but I'm not coloring all of them in the same corner at the same time. So I'm like coloring this one, and then I'm moving here, and I'm coloring that one, and then I'm moving there, and I'm adding a little bit of color to that one. So you're starting to see the strands appear.
Yeah.
But they're still not appearing in like sort of serial order. It's more along the lines of, these 2 parts, this is where they're connecting, and this is sort of like the loop they're going through. And that's going to continue. Again, that's part of the whole. I think for me, that's part of the magic of the story.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's ultimately when we get to the end of Act 2, hopefully, you will have an image of the full tapestry.
There you go.
Right? And then Act 3 is going to be like, oh, holy crap. What do we do now?
This is the journey aspect of it, right?
This is the discovery aspect.
Yeah.
And you're doing that at different levels too, because just in this last chapter, you had 2 things going on. And when Solace, and she did the thing and she could hear everything, and then headache explode, and then they said, "What's wrong with your eyes?" And then right away you went off to Lomic, doing his thing, and you kept me back here going, "Oh, what's wrong with your eyes?"
I was doing the same thing. I was like, wait a second.
I want to. Oh, and then, but it was interesting what was going on with him in that conversation. But there was a hook in there, and that's part of this weave that you're doing also on chapter by chapter. But that was intro chapter.
Well, when you think about it, this is like coloring a strand, but I'm only coloring it halfway.
Right.
And it's starting to turn, and I stopped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait.
I know it's unsettling. Wait, you need to close that.
Come back.
Are you messing with me, man? As it turns out, you are. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This was the book 5, read by Barak, Act 2, Chapter 4, Assignment, and Chapter 5, Insertion. If you like what you've heard, please click that like button and subscribe to join us next time.